Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. You're here for part one of From 20 Customer Pains to a 90-Day Content Calendar that Converts. Today, we're starting with the foundation, which is what AI needs to know before it can create content that sounds like your company. I'm Nathaniel Montgomery, founder and CEO of Stage 6. I'm joined by Derek, our head of content, and Marco, our CTO. And I'm going to set up the problem for you. Marco's going to show you why and how the foundation gets built, and then we'll walk you through some real life examples and leave you with something you can actually implement. So I'll start with a little backdrop, and that is what's changed recently or semi recently in the last couple of years. And that's simple. Everybody can publish more content now. You can, your competitors can, anybody with a ChatGPT account can produce a pile of articles really quickly. So the question is no longer, can we publish more? The real question is, what makes your content worth trusting and worth acting on when everybody has access to the same tools? And the answer is not tooling and it's not some magic prompt. It's the one thing that AI can't guess at on its own. And that's your specific way that your product connects to your customer pains and what you stand for. That's kind of your company's DNA. So the question becomes, how do you give AI the context before it starts writing? So the problem with AI content, and this is where we got really humbled at the beginning when we started out on this AI content journey. We thought the hard part was going to be in the production, like better prompts, better workflows, and how we can produce at a larger scale and faster. And of course, those things matter, but that was never the real problem. The real problem is that AI is very good at sounding smart. And the temptation is to think, well, once that content sounds smart, what else is there to improve, right? Um, because if it sounds smart, it feels like it must be doing the job. But the thing is, in a sea of smart sounding content, smart is no longer the thing that stands out. And honestly, I don't think that's anything new. Um, what does stand out is useful points of view. And I think that's always been the case. Something that gets someone nodding or shaking their head, whether they agree or disagree, it's irrelevant. It's just something that grabs your attention as a human being. Or thinking, hey, that's a way I hadn't looked at this before. And AI simply doesn't work by default like this. It literally is an averaging machine. It's designed to give you an average of all of the information it's trained on. And by its very nature, average flattens opinion. It removes like the drama and the edge that captures human attention. So you end up with content that sounds, like fine as a marketer, but once you sit in the reader's seat with just a few seconds to be convinced that this company is going to solve my problems, it becomes a very different story. The buyers likely know their problem far better than you ever will. And if your content has no insider edge, they're gonna, you're gonna lose them really quickly. So there's if there's nothing to agree with or disagree with, there's really no reason to keep reading, and definitely no reason to take the next step you're hoping they're gonna take. So I'll give you a short version of why we care about this. I've spent the last 20 years building businesses across a wide range of services, mostly what I would consider pretty unglamorous. I've had several exits, including 1 to 9 figures, and my background is mostly in companies that were not riding the kind of hypey AI waves, VC backed Silicon Valley high growth at any price companies. We always had to be useful and had to understand the buyer very well, and had to explain the value of what we were offering uh, clearly, so we would earn the trust of the buyers quickly. And that's the lens that we bring to AI content. Not can we make more of it faster, but can we make it useful enough so that the right buyers pay attention and move to the next step. And with that, I think I will hand it off to Marco.
Yeah, thanks, Nate. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining. Just a bit about myself before I get into the nitty and gritty of it all. I'm Marco Godlesh. I've been working in web and digital media for the last 25 years now, starting right back at the .com era. And I've worked across multiple agencies, web agencies, digital agencies, and then transitioned into media creation. And so I've really witnessed many transitional phases in the industry. And this is one of the first times in a long time where I'm genuinely excited about what's possible and what small teams can really achieve. And so before diving into the foundational documents, which I wanted to explain, just a quick kind of knowledge base on how AI systems work. So before diving into what we're here to talk about, and these are the foundational documents, I think it's important to have a little understanding about how these AI models actually work. And by default, they pull from two different sources. It's either the training data, which is essentially a snapshot from the web from a particular moment in time, and then the live web search. So they already have some sort of base understanding from your company, what's publicly available. But that's the outsider view. It doesn't know things like what you believe and the ethics behind your product and what your internal teams are saying on sales calls. Or how does your founder talk about problems when nobody's scripting them? This is essentially what we are talking about when we're talking foundational documents. And I've got a couple slides here I'll share to my presentation to keep you visually stimulated. So we got the foundation documents matter because context is everything. And when I say context is everything, I mean, without context, AI defaults to the average of everything it knows. And so these foundational documents are what helps stop the drift towards what the average is. And they close that gap between what AI knows about you from the outside and what's actually true to your company on the inside. And so part of that is to compile everything into a single source of truth. So your product claims, your company beliefs, your biopsychology, they're all living in one place. And it's no more guessing and no more conflicting with multiple avenues of information across different teams. And this becomes kind of a living ecosystem. It's creating this single source of truth is consistently updated, and it evolves as your messaging and your product or even the market shifts. So one update gets updated in one place, and so that the information flows downstream from just one single source of living documents. So this becomes in essence, your company's DNA. And it's not the problem that it's not a production problem anymore. It's just about giving AI the right company-specific judgment before it generates anything. And so, what does what do these foundation documents look like, and how does it look like in practice? So, through the work that we've done, we've identified four documents that give you the strongest starting point. They're not the only context documents that we use in our pipeline, but it's the strongest four that we have found that create this core context that everything can be built from. This includes the product truth. So this is your factual reference. What does your product actually do? What can you claim with evidence? What you can't claim? What are your real limitations? Then you've got your core narrative. This is a document where it's about what your company believes. So it's not your tagline, not what you have on publicly facing information. It's about your real convictions. So what do you stand for? What are you against? And what's the point of view that you should run through everything that before it gets published? This is where your content really gets its edge, you know. Document number 3, the ICP and bio context. It's about who you're actually writing for, not the job titles, but the real person. What situation are they in? What are they afraid of? As we talk about pains, and how can you solve their pains? And what do they need to believe before they commit to a purchase? And then the 4th document is the positioning context. And I just actually noticed I've got 2 number 3s, but that's editorial mistake there. So number 4, positioning context, it's really about how you describe yourself. and then how you don't want to describe yourself. Like what are you not? What specifically makes you different from your competitors? This is really what stops your content from sounding like it could belong to anyone else in your space. And each document here is to prevent a specific failure point. So the product truth prevents vague claims. The core narrative presents bland neutrality. Your ICP, for example, prevents shallow buyer understanding about your product. And positioning makes sure that it prevents any interchangeable content. And they all have a single job, and it's really important that they don't overlap. So building these really comes down to asking the right questions, and more specifically, the questions that only your company can answer. And to give you the most basic of understanding, think about the question like this. If you asked AI, what's my favorite color? It has no ability to answer that correctly. And if it does give you an answer, it's assuming and it's guessing. And it's these type of questions that will give your content the richness and uniqueness. And it's the kind of questions that we're talking about here. It's not necessarily generic industry questions. We're talking about questions that the answer is uniquely yours. So turning this basic example of what your favorite color is into a little bit of practicality, you kind of get questions like this, like what would your founder say to about your industry over coffee that would not appear in marketing material? Or why do customers choose you over your competitors in the customer's words, not yours? And so that's where the uniqueness of these questions come into play. And the first thing that we get asked when we're presenting this to our clients is that where can we find these answers? And the most reassuring aspect of this is that your company has been producing these answers for years, and the best content already exists. You've just never organized them. So right now, all your information lives in multiple places. You've got channels like email, social media, LinkedIn, WhatsApp, Slack, HubSpot, Google Docs. I mean, the list goes on. And the pitch deck that you created 6 months ago for the end of Q4 gets lost and stale in a folder somewhere. And it's about compiling all these content that already exists and essentially using AI as a leverage point, because it's the first time in history where small teams are able to do the work of what big teams used to require. And we can compile all that information. So sales calls, recordings, how your team actually describes the product and handles the objections. You've got customer feedback, reviews, support tickets, testimonials, feature specs. I mean, the list goes on. I'm not going to list them all out here. But the idea is compiling everything so that you can build this single source of truth documents. And then going beyond this, you can also enrich this by creating founder interviews. You know, so much of content and so much of your company information is locked away in people's heads. So we're actually going to do a webinar coming up soon about, you know, the types of questions that you can ask your founders or your sales team or these type of avenues of your company to enrich this this content that already exists. And finally, it's like when you finally get to the point you've created these 4 core context documents, what happens then? Well, here's where it gets exciting, because then it unlocks a constant flow of accurate and foundational documents that some of these are, you know, your personas, your customer pain mapping, you build a content calendar, but you know, these foundational documents are your core features to be able to create anything like this downstream. So on that note, I'm going to hand it back to you, Nate. And in essence, it's we can show you what this kind of looks like when we build it into a system, and we have a couple prompts and we have a couple frameworks that we can give away to get you to a good starting point.
Okay, so yeah, this is where we want to make it practical. And thanks, Marco, for that great explanation. Just one thought that came to my head when you were talking about this stuff, like people might be wondering, well, how the heck do I, how does an interview translate into anything really? But this is probably the most amazing thing about AI in general is that it is a parsing machine, meaning it can take complicated puzzles of information and extract exactly what you need from it. So you therefore only need to ask the right questions. And that's why, we can take a bunch of documents, like Marco was saying, from PowerPoint slides to your Google Drive, and just say, hey, here's my questions. And all of a sudden, and here's a format of a document that I want to output. And all of a sudden, you've got these beautiful documents that you then just need to do a quick review of, and those are your foundation documents. So, the point is you're not starting from zero. The raw material already exists, and it's in these hard-won things that your team says every day that the job is not to invent a point of view from scratch, because the point of view already exists. The job is to extract it, organize it, and make it usable, right? Yeah. So let me show you one example. This is from a real client. So yours is obviously going to look quite different, but the point is not to copy this, although we will give you a framework for these four documents so that you can say, hey, this is, and we'll also give you the foundational document questions. So when you pair those two things, you've got the questions that you're going to ask AI, you've got a framework for what the output should look like, and then in between, you can either answer the questions yourself or you can feed it, your Google Drive, plus answer the questions, and you'll end up with these documents very, very quickly. Yeah, so the point is not to copy what we have here, but the point is to understand what the document does and kind of just give you a highlight of some of the sections. Yeah, so this is one of our clients that we have permission to share from. Uh, Roar is a company that provides staff to rest systems for mostly for healthcare centers or hospitals, aka panic buttons. So the nurses walk around, if they're in a situation, they can just tap their panic button, and programmatically something happens, like security shows up, maybe the police are informed. Um, yeah, so this is the core narrative for Roar. And what it covers are things like their mission. This is what they stand for, why they exist. Roar is B certified, for example. It's women led, and their founder does a lot of TED Talks because she created this company out of a personal mission. So for Roar, that's a really important thing. Then there's a little bit about the market that Roar is writing into. Who's this for, right? Workplace violence, people, frontline workers that undergo workplace violence. And then you've got a through line. So this is kind of the North Star, right? Um, and then there are core beliefs. And again, these core beliefs, this is just a question, what are your core beliefs? But it's something that if you feed the AI enough information, you'll end up with some answers to this, which you can then go through and correct if they're a little bit out of date or it's pulled it from a spot that you didn't want to pull it from. But for Roar, pretty simple. Trust is their foundation. They don't compete on features, specification, or price. Uh, for them, it's all about trust and simplicity. So in a crisis, what do they believe? What is their opinion? Simplicity is what saves lives, right? That's why they have a simple panic button. Um, another belief, core value, and by the way, these kinds of core values really come through strong in everything that we write for Roar. Uh, so these are the through line. You'll find these in just about every article where it makes sense. Uh, it's repeated in various ways and supported by several features of their product. And this is what makes it a core belief for them. All right. No one should be afraid while trying to earn a living. All right. This is something that their founder, Yasmin, you'll hear her say this again and again in her TED Talks, because this is really the problem that she lived when she was serving in capacity at a health center before she founded the company. Right. And then we have, who are the main voices within the company. So we talk a little bit about those. And we have more documents that define further this kind of stuff. But like Marco said, these are the four documents that we believe are at the very center and will get you, let's say, 80% of the way. You'll start figuring out what else you need later. All right. Yeah, and then I think we can go on to the question framework. So that's the other thing we want to share, and we will share with you the question framework. And this is the starting point. These are the questions you can start extracting raw material from your foundation documents. Let's hop on over to that. Um, and you don't need to make this more complicated than it is. These are really simple questions. So there's just 10 questions for product truth, for example. You can use it with the materials you already have, those sales transcripts, the product docs, the website copy, case studies, customer reviews, all that kind of stuff. Um, Ask which questions can already be answered from the material, or you ask the AI that. And if a question can't be answered, that's useful too. It might mean that you have a gap. And when we work with companies earlier on, we actually find that there tend to be a lot of gaps. But as the world moves to a more agentic world, we've really started to understand that this ground truth documentation is something that every company needs. It can no longer be stored in the heads of the founders, in the VP of sales head, in processes that are scattered across documentation. And the reason for that is that our content engine, your content engine is just one agent that is going to be utilizing this core truth, that we call it the ground truth, uh, and taking action on the company's behalf more and more often moving forward. Yeah, so we've got product truth questions. Things like, what does your product do in one sentence? These should be really easy questions to answer. What are your core capabilities? What specific claims can we make that are backed by evidence? And just a side note here, these are a starting point. For every company we work with, we actually have more than these documents. We have things like a database of claims. We have things like a database of industry statistics that are commonly used, right? And you'll find that when you talk with your VP of sales, they'll be like, yeah, here's the 10 statistics that are most compelling right now with the customers that we're currently talking with, right? And these kinds of things are things that you will pull out over time as you put the system into place and have those regular interviews. So what we do is we conduct regular interviews with VPs. We conduct regular interviews with the CEO, because this ground truth is a living foundational document set. It's not something that you set and forget. It's something that constantly evolves, just like a company. You know, and what's in the CEO's head about what's important and what's not important is changing literally from week to week. I can say that from experience. You might have believed one thing last week and you believe something completely else about how a sale should go down next week, right? Then we have core narrative. Why does the company exist? What problem drove us to build this company, right? What is the market reality that creates the need we exist to fulfill? And on and on. And then some about the ICP, which is the ideal customer profile and buyer context. And this is very simple. We go a lot deeper with this stuff, but this is going to get you 80% of the way there, and this is going to take your generic vanilla AI content and really breathe some life into it. Even if you just do this, and even if you just do it within a single ChatGPT conversation, ask these questions, answer them, and then, even just try saying, "Hey, chat, write me an article on this." Using this as a foundation and see what you get. You will be blown away. Positioning context, how we describe what we do to someone who's never heard of us. What gap do we fill in the current alternative fail to solve? Who are the alternatives? Obviously, very important. Where does each alternative break down? Uh, so that's that. So this should take the guessing out of the framework for you, and we will share all of these, the four core foundational document frameworks, and the questions that you can start with. Obviously, you can go deeper than we have here. These are just a starting point for you. Drop them into your AI assistant. Um, Record some conversations, feed it back to the system, and now you're not asking AI to invent your position anymore. You're asking AI to structure what your company already knows. Right, so that's the foundation. After this session, we'll share those things with you. And if you're not joining with us today live, then we will put them somewhere neatly in the notes so you can download them. I want to be clear about what this does and what it doesn't do. This will make your AI outputs better, more specific. It'll make them more grounded in your buyer and more connected to what your company believes. But it's not the whole engine. It's the first layer, and it'll get you really far. It will probably dramatically improve your outputs. The rest of the series is about training this foundation, to a 90-day content calendar, and that's where we want to get you. We want to show you the rest of it. So we'll cover how to map the customer pains, choose content opportunities, build briefs, produce the content, and improve the system over time. And there's some very compelling content coming over the next few weeks. And the point is not that your first version will be perfect. It won't be. The point is that once you have that version, you finally have something you can improve, something that AI can work from. And if this feels important but hard to fix for your team's workload, that's where Stage 6 can help. We support B2B teams from foundation documents and content planning through to the full production. And if you want help seeing what AI is missing about your company, book a context layer audit call with us, and we'll walk you through it. We'd love to meet you. All right, I think that's it. We'll go on to the questions. Thanks very much, Marco. And Derek, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, thanks everyone.